Today's recipes include a no-egg eggnog. We've got avocado chocolate mousse. And last but not least, actually the favorite recipe of mine is the cashew cookie dough balls. I did want to mention that one of the ingredients is a little challenging to track down. So if you weren't able to get it for this time, I'd say go online, take a look at the shopping list that I sent you, and there's some links to how to pick up those recipe items or those menu ingredients. The ingredient is called lucuma, and this is the brand that I get is from Terrasol. A little goes a long way, and it has a very unique flavor, so I recommend picking it up. You can make the recipes without it, and the recipe that I adapted the cookies from actually used oat flour. They didn't use lucuma, they used oat flour. Okay, so you can go to the grocery store and get almond milk pretty easily these days. You can also use any other of the nut or seed milks. I bet macadamia nut milk would be pretty awesome. The other night I tested out this recipe, and I threw 4 Brazil nuts in the blender, and then I put a cup of water, and then I blended it smooth, and then I added the rest of the ingredients. So you can do that in a fix. One of the other things I do is this is raw almond butter that I made. And so I added, that's what the recipe here tells you. It says 2.5 cups of water or nut milk. Now, if you're using water, you would do the 2.5 cups of water, and you'd put 2 to 3 tablespoons of raw almond butter in the blender. In essence, you're making an instant almond milk. You could use, if you wanted to use peanut butter, which I think would be really weird, but you guys can test that out and give me a report. But you could use any of the other raw nut butters, cashew butter. But the easiest way to go is to get your favorite almond milk or nut milk. If it has vanilla, if it's a vanilla version, you could do that, and it would taste very nice. Or if it is sweetened, you adjust the taste, because the ingredients, the recipe here is for unsweetened milk. Okay, so I saw that Cindy and Ellie, they're using, I think, macadamia nut milk. So I'm really curious how that tastes. Is that macadamia one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you get that at Costco or where was it? Okay. $10
a case.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna make a half recipe. So I just put the milk of your choice in the blender, and 2.5 would be half of that's 2 and 1 1/4. Oh,
We're doing a fall, right?
and this is almond milk that I got at organic almond milk, and I got this at Aldi. I'm using coconut palm sugar. Other options are agave, maple syrup. If you're doing low glycemic or you're diabetic, you're going to do sugar-free or something, you can use any of the monk fruit type sweeteners. So I'm putting in my coconut palm sugar.
Do you prefer that over the maple syrup?
Actually, maple syrup's pretty much the best ever. I just used it up this week. So, and also if you had a agave that had like a vanilla flavor in it or something, you could do that as well. One of the fun things I did when I made my own almond milk is I made the recipe with the couple tablespoons of almond butter, and I tasted it, and then I put some avocado in there, just a couple tablespoons for the full recipe, and I blended, and it gave it a creamier texture. So I recommend doing that if you're making your own milk according to the instructions above with the almond butter or whatever nut butter you choose. The almond milk that I got at the store, it has they add some, thickeners and stuff, and you have that kind of creamy texture. So you could experiment by adding, but I found that you can add a creaminess to any of your drinks by just adding like a tablespoon of avocado, and it kind of has a nice little effect. So on my little plate here, I have everything else measured out. The trick to eggnog is the spices. And so the spices, the main one is nutmeg. Now there's other spices in eggnog as well. And so we're using those other, but to me, what I really remember about eggnog is nutmeg. So we also have cinnamon. We're using, in the full recipe, we're using a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I actually am using whole bean vanilla, and you can, if I hold this up to the camera, you can see the little black flecks. That's whole bean vanilla, which I scraped. That stuff's like worth its weight in gold. And so that's what, I have vanilla beans in here. I've scraped all the little bits from the inside, and I'm actually saving these because I'm going to put them, if I get agave or some other sweetener, or even if I'm making a tea, I'll put the used up vanilla beans, and the flavor will draw out. So if you ever get vanilla beans and you use the inside stuff, don't throw them away. You can still get flavor out of them. I have my cinnamon, my nutmeg, and my clove. Clove is going to be the least amount of all the spices because it's the most powerful. But so a little bit of the clove. In the 2 serving recipe, you're only using a 1/4 teaspoon of ground clove. And if you have those like whole cloves, you're going to have to put them in a coffee grinder or do something, blend them down because they're not going to work. You don't want to be choking on a clove. A little pinch of salt brings out the flavor. My little pinch of salt. And then, of course, I have lucuma, so I'm putting lucuma in this, and that's going to give it its own little kind of. So more about lucuma. Lucuma is a dry fruit. It's a fruit from South America. It's also known as canistel or egg fruit, and it has a really unique flavor. And I've heard people describe the smell of it as like, it smells like powdered raisins. Pro tip, never run the blender without the lid, because I'm crossing my fingers. Every now and then my blender decides to go on high without permission. So I like to blend it up and get a nice little froth. We're going to try it out, see what we got. Depending on what sweetener you're using, you might want to add a little more, you might want to use less. I know that agave comes across sweeter than most, than it's 1-to-1 equal with sugar or even coconut palm sugar. Oh yeah, nice. I actually think this is a little too sweet, which I think some people would think I've gone crazy. If it's too sweet for me, then something's wrong. So I add a little more milk. Pour it back in here. Give it another blend.
And guess what?
Ours isn't too sweet.
Okay. What did you use to sweeten it? Did you use palm sugar or maple?
No, we use maple syrup.
Okay. Yeah.
It's pretty darn good.
The other thing we did add, we used a microplaner and real nutmeg.
Yeah.
Really
So yeah,
good.
show that to the camera. That's what a whole nutmeg is. Yeah, before, you know, you can get it powdered or you can buy the whole nutmeg, and you need a box shredder, or what she has there is, they call that a zester. Okay, so this is ready to go for your holiday parties. And you can do different variations depending on the spice. You could add some peppermint or something like that and kind of make like a minty drink. I don't have to clean the blender because I'll do the mousse right afterwards. And in essence, you could make the mousse, the avocado chocolate mousse, with the eggnog as part of the liquid. So you'd have like a eggnog chocolate mousse, we just invented that on this class right now. That's our thing. We created a new recipe.
Have you ever done it with peanut butter instead of almond butter?
For which one?
For the avocado chocolate mousse.
No, I haven't, and that sounds yummy. It's like chocolate peanut butter cup, right?
Right, because I can't find my almond butter, so that's what we're doing.
Do it.
These
I
are
kind of feel like that half a cup of cacao powder might be a little much.
Oh, I would try it.
So I'm gonna say start out with quarter cup, and then we'll taste it. Okay, so avocado goes in the blender first. And you don't need a supercharged blender for this recipe. So the trick with this, you know you got it right if it's indiscernible that it's made with avocado. If you can taste the avocado, you're not quite there yet, because you know that's the genius of this recipe is you serve it to someone without telling what you say. Oh yeah, try this chocolate mousse. They go, oh my gosh, I love it. And you say, oh yeah, it's made with avocado, and then you got them. You're like, ha ha. All right, so I have my cacao is separate here. I have my sweetener, which is coconut palm sugar again. I put my whole bean vanilla in here. You guys can be using extract. Put my pinch of salt. The salt, once again, is just to bring out the other flavors. You can also add cinnamon to this recipe. Quarter cup cacao powder. It says 1/2 on the recipe, but we're testing it out. We're going to test it out. Only a 1/2 cup of water. So measure that. And there we go. And then we blend. All right, everybody's in, hat on, away we go. So you know you got it right if it's nice and fluffy, and it does look nice and fluffy. It needs more sweetener. That's my vote. How are you guys doing at home? What do you think?
I'm at 3 tablespoons, and I still think it needs more.
Yeah, I believe it's a quarter cup. Oh, and I didn't add the almond butter. That's why mine's not thick enough. I threw that almond butter in there. Bam. All right, almond butter's in, and give it a little blend. Okay. Yeah, I think the almond butter also helps to mellow out the. Okay, yeah. So the sweetener comes in around a quarter cup, and I'm okay with a quarter cup of cacao powder. Now the difference between cacao powder and cocoa might, if you go shopping at the grocery store, you're gonna find cocoa in the baking section. Cocoa's processed in a different way. It's not as high quality as just the pure cacao powder, and it's literally just spelled differently and packaged differently. You can make this recipe with cocoa, and it'll taste fine. But the cacao powder is closer to the raw and original chocolate from the chocolate tree. Cacao is a superfood, high in antioxidants and some really unique chemicals that support heart health, support mood. Of course, in moderation, you can overdo chocolate, but in moderation, it can have really great benefits. All right, how's it tasting over there? We got a little feedback. I got a thumbs up from Tennessee. How's it in Michigan? Betsy? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, Mary's in Michigan. She's giving me a thumbs up too.
Oh, dear. Good.
Yeah, we got two people in Michigan.
My mother is cleaning out the container.
Oh, it's that good. Okay, this cookie recipe, I think Cindy and I learned about it at a restaurant in Chicago called Native Foods, and they actually had a very similar recipe, but they use oats in it, or oat. They take rolled oats and they grind it up and make a flour. And so I added the lucuma. I changed the recipe and found that the lucuma is bomb. So we got all our goodies here. So the challenging ingredient is lucuma. Cacao nibs are also kind of weird. They're not as easy to find. Now you could substitute like a chocolate chip. I have the coconut and the cashew measured out, and I put that in first, and then I pulse it. I want to make basically a flour with this. Okay, so, and you want it to almost be like a powder. All right, so I'm pulsing, I'm running it. Okay, so you take a look here, kind of a fine, almost like flour. All right, so I just added the sweetener, the lucuma, and the vanilla. Oh, I don't see vanilla on here. Why isn't there any vanilla on here? All right, if you got the vanilla handy, add about, we do 1 teaspoon vanilla extract in this. The trick to this recipe is getting the moisture just right to where you can make the cookie dough balls. And so if you use coconut palm sugar or dry sweetener, you can then add water to get the moisture. So you get the dough, the right consistency, and then you add a little bit of liquid sweetener. So I can walk you through whatever you have. I'm using the coconut palm sugar, and then I'm going to add water at the very end. Maple syrup, I suggest that you add maple syrup while the food processor is running, and get the clumpy consistency. So everyone can see that this is it's just a flour at this point. And I have the sweetener in there already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the food processor, and it takes about 2 tablespoons of water for this to get to the proper consistency that I want.
I said one of the tricks I found is if you freeze the cashews and you start with frozen cashews,
Okay.
and they powder really nicely because the heat from the blender, doesn't break down the oils, and you get a much nicer flour.
It's a little clumpy. Okay, so there we go. You guys make a note of that. Pro tip is freeze the cashews in advance and then grind them. Okay. So who out there is using maple syrup or agave as their sweetener?
I use maple syrup.
Okay, so you're basically you're watching to see the texture get. See, right now it's still powdery. I want it to just to start beginning to clump.
I can tell you I added everything in the blender, just like you said, except for the, not blender, the food processor without the nibs.
Yeah.
I didn't make it into a powder, nothing, and my texture and moisture is perfect.
Okay.
I'm ready to add the nibs.
So when you get the right consistency, you transfer it to a bowl.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it. I pull out the mixture and I kind of pack it and make a little ball with it, and I know that it's ready to go. It doesn't. You don't want it to like stick to your fingers, but to be a little tacky. And so, and in the processor, it's kind of clumped together. So I'm good with this consistency. Now I'm ready to transfer it to the bowl. All right, so now we go into the bowl, and this is where you add the nibs, because you want, if you were to add it in the food processor, the blades would break it up. So if it ends up that it's too wet, what you do is you add some more of the oat flour or you add more lucuma, and that'll, but what you want to do is you just don't want to go and make it too wet. That's why you just add the liquid sweetener or the water like I did at the very end while it's running, and you wait till you start seeing the powder kind of stiffen up. And then we add the chocolate chips. And see, I'm just folding it in. If you want to do it by hand, I recommend that you have a little bit of oat flour or lucuma powder saved off to the side to keep it from sticking to your hands. Now what I'm doing is I have one of these little scoops, and that's how I do my cookies, is I use the scoop. But I found that after a few cookies, the mixture sticks inside of the inside of the scoop, and it becomes problematic. So what I do is I put a little bit of the either oat flour or the lucuma powder in a little bowl, and I coat the scoop each time I make a cookie. By doing that, I prevent the stickage. That's a word, right? Stickage. Okay, so as you see here, I put it in a little scoop. I coated it with the flour, and then I just go and I get these little cute little cookies. But roll them in the ball works too. If you wanted to make brownie bites, you would either put cacao powder, or you could put the nibs in the food processor or chocolate chips, and you run the food processor and it'll break it up, and you'll end up with brownie bites. So that's another variation of this recipe. So you can freeze them. They keep in the fridge for weeks, probably keep in the fridge for months. I mean, it'd be weird that no one would be eating them because they're so yummy.
Hey, Adam,
Yes.
I have a question for you. For the eggnog, have you ever used the Irish sea moss to thicken it without it turning brown?
Yeah, actually, Irish moss.
I have
Just
tons
make
of-
sure you pre-soak it,
Yeah, I had it like process, like I
rinse it, and soak
Yeah.
it. And rinse.
really
I
looks
actually
like
have some in the
Came from-
fridge right now. So I'm gonna try that. That would add a nice thickness to it, and then make it even more nutrient dense. Be really,
yeah.
yeah, good idea. Now, if you're making a vegan ice cream, you can take this cookie dough and drop it in the in the ice cream maker, like little chunks of it. And then you basically have a cookie dough, raw cookie dough ice cream. Excellent.
Overall, it was a great class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah, stay in touch. All right. You guys be safe. Enjoy.